They say blood is thicker than water, but what they don't tell you is that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who'll drain every drop from your veins. I learned this lesson the hard way when I discovered my own son had been living a double life, using my name as collateral for his dreams while I slept peacefully, trusting him completely. I'm Rebecca Martinez, and at 68 years old, I thought I'd seen every kind of betrayal life could throw at me. I was wrong, dead wrong, because nothing prepares you for the moment when strangers show up at your door, demanding payment for debts you never knew existed, threatening to take everything you've worked for your entire life. Before you judge me for what I'm about to tell you, let me paint you a picture of who my son Marcus used to be, or maybe who I thought he was. Comment below where you're watching from, and if you've ever had someone you trusted completely shatter that trust, because I have a feeling I'm not alone in this nightmare. This isn't just a story about financial fraud. This isn't just about a mother's broken heart. This is about how the American dream became my American nightmare, and how sometimes the people we love most are capable of destroying us in ways we never imagined possible. Stick around until the end, because what happened next will shock you, and the way this story resolves might just save you from making the same mistakes I did. Marcus was always my golden boy. Born when I was 24, raised him as a single mother after his father walked out when Marcus was just 3 years old. I worked double shifts at the hospital, saved every penny, made sure he had everything I never did growing up: private schools, college tuition, a car for his 16th birthday. I gave him the world because I believed in him, because he was smart, charming, and had this way of making everyone around him feel special. After college, Marcus moved to California, chasing what he called opportunities in tech. He'd call every Sunday, telling me about his startup, his investors, his big plans. I was so proud. My boy, the entrepreneur, making something of himself in Silicon Valley. When he asked me to be his emergency contact for business purposes, I didn't hesitate. When he needed me to sign some papers as a reference, I signed them gladly. After all, what mother wouldn't help her son achieve his dreams? For 2 years, everything seemed perfect. Marcus would send photos from expensive restaurants, talk about meetings with venture capitalists, describe his luxury apartment in San Francisco. He even flew me out for a visit once, showing me around his office space, introducing me to his business partners. I felt like the luckiest mother alive, watching my son build an empire from nothing. But there were signs I should have noticed. The way he'd change the subject when I asked specific questions about his business. How he always seemed to have cash, but was vague about actual revenue. The expensive watch he wore that didn't match the struggling startup story he sometimes told. The phone calls he'd take in another room, speaking in hushed tones about numbers and deadlines. I ignored every red flag, because I wanted to believe in him. Because when you love someone unconditionally, you make excuses for the things that don't add up. You tell yourself you're being paranoid, that successful people just operate differently, that you wouldn't understand the complexities of modern business. The first crack in my perfect world came on a Tuesday morning in October. I was having coffee on my porch, enjoying the fall weather in my small Ohio town, when a black sedan pulled into my driveway. 2 men in suits stepped out, and immediately, something in my chest tightened. They walked with the kind of purpose that meant trouble. "Mrs. Rebecca Martinez," the taller one asked, consulting a tablet. "Yes, that's me." "I'm Agent Thompson. This is Agent Rodriguez. We're from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. May we come inside?" The world tilted slightly. FBI, financial crimes. I invited them in because what else do you do when federal agents show up at your door? My hands were shaking as I poured them coffee, trying to process what this could possibly be about. Mrs. Martinez, are you familiar with Apex Innovation Technologies? I nodded slowly. That's my son's company. Marcus runs it. Agent Thompson exchanged a glance with his partner. Ma'am, we have some difficult information to share with you. Apex Innovation Technologies has been under investigation for fraudulent business practices. Your son, Marcus Martinez, has been using your identity to secure loans and credit lines totaling approximately $1.2 million. The coffee cup slipped from my hands, shattering on my kitchen floor. That's impossible. Marcus would never do that. Agent Rodriguez leaned forward gently. Mrs. Martinez, we have documentation showing that multiple financial institutions have your signature on loan applications, your social security number on credit applications, and your home address listed as collateral for business loans that are currently in default. Collateral. The word came out as a whisper. Yes, ma'am. Your home, your retirement accounts, even your late mother's jewelry that you listed on insurance policies. All of it has been pledged as security for loans that your son took out using your personal information. I felt like I was drowning, but I never signed anything like that. I would remember signing loan papers. Agent Thompson pulled out a manila folder. Mrs. Martinez, do you recognize this signature? He showed me a document, and there it was. My signature. Perfect, unmistakable, exactly how I'd been signing my name for 40 years, but I had never seen this paper before in my life. I don't understand, I said, staring at my own handwriting on a document I'd never signed. How is this possible? Ma'am, we believe your son has been forging your signature on financial documents for approximately 18 months. The sophistication of the forgery suggests he's had considerable practice. We also have evidence that he's been intercepting mail sent to your address, including loan statements and collection notices that you never saw. The room was spinning. My own son, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd trusted completely, had been systematically stealing my identity, my credit, my entire financial future, and I never knew. Where is Marcus now? I managed to ask. That's part of why we're here. Mr. Martinez has been missing for 3 weeks. His business associates claim they haven't seen him. His apartment in San Francisco has been abandoned, and all of his known bank accounts have been emptied. Missing. My son was missing, and apparently he'd taken my entire life savings with him. Agent Rodriguez continued, Mrs. Martinez, I need to inform you that several financial institutions are currently pursuing legal action to recover the defaulted loans. Since your name is on the documents and your assets were used as collateral, you're being held responsible for the debt. But I didn't sign those papers. You just told me they were forged. Yes, ma'am, but proving forgery in court can be a lengthy and expensive process. In the meantime, the creditors have legal standing to pursue collection activities against the assets listed as collateral. What does that mean exactly? Agent Thompson's expression was grim. It means they can seize your home, freeze your bank accounts, and claim any valuable assets until the debt is satisfied, or until we can prove definitively that the signatures were forged. I sat there in my kitchen, surrounded by the life I'd built over 6 decades, and realized that everything I owned, everything I'd worked for, everything I'd saved for my retirement, was about to be taken away because my son had betrayed me in the most devastating way possible. There's something else, Agent Rodriguez said softly. We've discovered that this isn't Mr. Martinez's first offense. He's been running similar schemes in 3 other states, using different identities and targeting elderly individuals for financial fraud. Elderly individuals? I repeated numbly. Yes, ma'am. It appears your son has been specifically targeting older adults, often family members or people who trust him, for identity theft and loan fraud. You're not his first victim, Mrs. Martinez. You're just the most recent. The agents spent another hour explaining the investigation, the legal process, and what I could expect in the coming weeks. They left me with business cards, case numbers, and the crushing realization that my son wasn't just a criminal. He was a predator who specialized in destroying the lives of people exactly like me. After they left, I sat alone in my house, staring at the walls that might not be mine much longer, trying to reconcile the Marcus I'd raised with the man who had systematically dismantled my entire existence. How do you process the fact that the person you love most in the world has been planning your destruction for months, maybe years? I called my sister Elena, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. "Rebecca, what's wrong? You sound terrible." Through tears, I told her everything. The FBI visit, the loans, the forgeries, Marcus disappearing with my money and my future. Elena was quiet for a long time before she spoke. "Becca, honey, I have to tell you something. Marcus called me about 6 months ago, asking questions about your finances, your house, whether you had any life insurance policies. I thought it was sweet that he was worried about your future, so I told him everything I knew. Even my sister had been unknowingly helping him rob me blind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my house, touching furniture I might lose, looking at photos of happier times when I believed my son loved me. I found myself in Marcus's old bedroom, preserved exactly as he'd left it when he moved to California. His high school trophies, his college diploma, pictures of us together at his graduation. On his old desk, I found a notebook from his teenage years. Curious, I opened it and began reading. Page after page of signatures. My signature, practiced over and over until he'd perfected it. This wasn't a recent development. Marcus had been preparing to steal from me since he was 17 years old. The discovery of that notebook changed everything. I wasn't dealing with a son who had made a desperate mistake or gotten in over his head with bad business decisions. I was dealing with someone who had been calculating my destruction since high school. The Marcus I thought I knew had never existed at all. I spent the rest of that sleepless night going through every interaction we'd had over the past 5 years, reframing each conversation with this new knowledge. The times he'd insisted on handling my taxes to save me money. The way he'd convinced me to switch to online banking because it was more convenient. How he'd offered to help me organize my important documents, claiming he wanted to make sure everything was in order for my future. Every act of love had been an act of theft. Every moment of motherly pride had been built on lies. The next morning brought the first collection call. The phone rang at 7 a.m. sharp, and a robotic voice informed me that I had 30 days to respond to a legal notice regarding defaulted business loans. The automated message rattled off numbers that made my blood run cold. $400,000 to First National Bank, $250,000 to Pacific Coast Credit Union, another $300,000 to something called Venture Capital Lending Solutions. By noon, I'd received 6 more calls. By evening, there were official-looking letters in my mailbox, each one more threatening than the last. Legal action pending. Asset seizure imminent. Demand for immediate payment. I called Agent Thompson, my voice barely steady. "They're coming for everything. The banks are saying I have to pay immediately or they'll take my house." "Mrs. Martinez, I understand this is overwhelming. We're working as fast as we can to build the forgery case. But these things take time. The financial institutions have to protect their interests until we can prove the signatures were fraudulent." "How long does that take?" "Could be months, Maybe longer if your son's legal team fights the charges. His legal team? You found him? There was a pause. Mrs. Martinez, we located Mr. Martinez yesterday. He's been arrested in Miami, living under an assumed identity. He's hired a very expensive defense attorney and is claiming that you were a willing participant in the loan applications. The words hit me like a physical blow. He's saying I knew about this? Yes, ma'am. His defense is that this was a family business arrangement that went bad and that you were fully aware of the financial obligations. He's produced emails and text messages that he claims show your consent to the loans. I knew those messages had to be fabricated, but suddenly I understood how deep this went. Marcus hadn't just stolen my identity. He'd been building a case to frame me as his accomplice for months, maybe years. Agent Thompson, I need you to understand something. I never sent those emails. I never agreed to any loans. My son has destroyed my life, and now he's trying to destroy what's left of my reputation. We believe you, Mrs. Martinez, but proving it in court is going to be complicated. Your son is very smart, and he's had a lot of time to cover his tracks. After hanging up, I realized I needed help beyond what the FBI could provide. I called every lawyer in town, but the moment I explained my situation, the conversation always ended the same way. This kind of case was complex, expensive, and there was no guarantee of success. Most attorneys wanted $50,000 just to get started. Money I didn't have because my accounts were frozen pending the investigation. That's when I remembered something my mother used to tell me. When the world turns against you, Rebecca, you turn back twice as hard. She'd said it when my husband left, when I was struggling to raise Marcus alone, when it felt like everything was falling apart. I'd survived before. I could survive this. But first, I needed to understand exactly how bad things were. I spent the next 3 days making phone calls, requesting documents, piecing together the full scope of Marcus's betrayal. What I discovered was worse than the FBI had initially told me. The loans weren't just in my name. Marcus had opened credit cards, secured lines of credit, even taken out a second mortgage on my house that I knew nothing about. He'd been intercepting my mail for over 2 years, rerouting financial statements to a post office box he controlled. He'd even filed tax returns on my behalf, claiming business losses that reduced my tax burden while hiding the income from his fraudulent activities. The most devastating discovery came when I called my bank about my retirement account. The woman on the phone was confused when I asked about my balance. Mrs. Martinez, that account was closed 8 months ago. The funds were transferred to your business checking account per your written request. What business checking account? The account for Apex Innovation Technologies. You're listed as the primary account holder. Marcus hadn't just stolen from me. He'd convinced the bank that I was his business partner, using forged documents to make himself an authorized user on accounts I didn't even know existed. My entire life savings, 40 years of careful budgeting and responsible saving, had been funneled into his fake company and then disappeared when he ran. I was 68 years old, facing over $1 million in debt I didn't create, with no savings, no retirement fund, and a son who was telling the world that I was his criminal partner. The house I'd lived in for 30 years was about to be seized by creditors, and I had nowhere to turn. But as I sat in my kitchen that night, surrounded by legal papers and collection notices, something inside me shifted. The initial shock and heartbreak were giving way to something harder, sharper, anger, pure, focused rage at what my son had done to me. Marcus had calculated that I would be easy to destroy because I loved him. He'd counted on my trust, my maternal instincts, my willingness to believe the best about him. He thought that by the time I discovered his betrayal, I'd be too broken and too poor to fight back. He was wrong. I might be 68. I might be facing financial ruin, but I wasn't dead yet. And if Marcus thought he could frame me for his crimes while living comfortably in a Miami jail cell with his expensive lawyers, he had seriously underestimated the woman who'd raised him. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done since Marcus was a teenager and got caught cheating on his SATs. I got dressed, put on my best jewelry, and prepared to go to war with my own son. Because sometimes, when the people you love betray you, the most loving thing you can do is make sure they face the consequences of their choices, even if it destroys what's left of your family, even if it breaks your heart all over again. Marcus had taught me that blood might be thicker than water, but justice is thicker than blood. And I was about to give him a lesson in exactly what that meant. The first stop was the local newspaper. If Marcus wanted to play games with public perception, I was going to make sure everyone in our hometown knew exactly what kind of man he really was. The editor, a woman named Sarah Chen, who'd known our family for years, listened to my story with growing outrage. "Rebecca, this is incredible. Your own son did this to you." That's exactly what happened, and now he's trying to claim I was part of it. I want people to know the truth before his lies spread. The article ran 2 days later with the headline, "Local Mother Victimized by Son's $1 million Fraud Scheme." It included quotes from FBI agents, copies of forged documents, and a timeline of Marcus's deception. Within hours, my phone was ringing with calls from neighbors, friends, and complete strangers offering support. But more importantly, the article caught the attention of someone I never expected to hear from. A lawyer named David Kim from Chicago called me that evening. "Mrs. Martinez, I read about your situation. I specialize in elder financial abuse cases, and I think I can help you. Mr. Kim, I appreciate the call, but I can't afford legal representation right now. Ma'am, I work on contingency for cases like this. I don't get paid unless we win. And based on what I've read, your son has made some very serious mistakes that we can use against him." For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe I wasn't as helpless as I'd thought. David Kim arrived at my house 3 days later, carrying a briefcase that looked like it had survived several legal wars. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of energy that made me think he genuinely enjoyed fighting impossible battles. "Mrs. Martinez, before we start, I need you to understand something. Your son isn't just a criminal. He's a sophisticated one. The forgery work, the mail interception, the systematic identity theft. This took planning and skill. But here's the thing about sophisticated criminals. They always think they're the smartest person in the room, and that arrogance becomes their weakness." He spread documents across my dining room table, each one marked with colorful tabs and annotations. "I've been reviewing the FBI's preliminary findings, and Marcus made 3 critical mistakes that are going to destroy his defense." I leaned forward, desperate for any good news. "What kind of mistakes?" "First, he got greedy. The loan amounts were so large that every bank was required to verify the collateral independently. When you forge someone's signature, you can control the paperwork, but you can't control third-party verification processes. We have 3 separate property appraisals that your son couldn't have known about, and each one shows discrepancies in the ownership documentation he provided. And David pulled out a thick folder. Second, he left a digital trail. Your son thought he was clever intercepting physical mail, but he couldn't intercept electronic communications. I found email confirmations, automated text alerts, and digital signatures that were sent to accounts he didn't control. The banks have records of communications that were supposed to go to you, but bounce back as undeliverable because the email addresses were fake. And the third mistake? His smile was cold and professional. He underestimated his mother. Marcus built his entire defense on the assumption that you'd be too devastated and too broke to fight back effectively. He never considered that you'd find competent legal representation and that your story would generate public sympathy. The newspaper article you published has already been picked up by 3 major news outlets, and the FBI is getting pressure from above to expedite their investigation. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I might actually win. What do we do now? Now we go nuclear. We file a civil lawsuit against Marcus for damages, but not just for the money he stole. We sue him for emotional distress, defamation, elder abuse, and intentional infliction of harm. We make this so expensive and so public that his fancy Miami lawyers start questioning whether they want to be associated with this case. Over the next hour, David explained his strategy. It was aggressive, comprehensive, and designed to put maximum pressure on Marcus from every possible angle. We would work with the FBI to strengthen the criminal case while simultaneously pursuing civil remedies. We'd use media attention to generate public support and political pressure. And we'd attack Marcus's credibility so thoroughly that no jury would believe his claims about my supposed involvement. Mrs. Martinez, I need to ask you something difficult. Are you prepared to testify against your son in open court, to sit across from him and tell a judge and jury exactly what he did to you? The question hit harder than I expected. Despite everything Marcus had done, he was still my child. The thought of facing him in court, of publicly detailing his betrayal, made my chest ache with a pain that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with love that wouldn't die no matter how much I wanted it to. Yes, I said quietly. If that's what it takes to clear my name and get my life back, then yes. David nodded approvingly. Good. Because Marcus is counting on your maternal instincts to protect him even now. He's gambling that when it comes down to it, you won't be able to go through with destroying him in court. We're going to prove him wrong. The next few weeks became a blur of legal preparations, media interviews, and constant phone calls with investigators. David had been right about the public reaction. My story resonated with people in ways I never anticipated. I received hundreds of letters from strangers sharing their own experiences with family financial abuse. Several major news networks reached out for interviews. A victims' rights organization offered to help with legal expenses. But the most unexpected support came from Marcus's high school girlfriend, Jessica, who called me one evening with information that changed everything. Mrs. Martinez, I saw the news story about Marcus. I need to tell you something that might help your case. Jessica explained that she'd dated Marcus for 3 years in high school and had broken up with him when she discovered he'd been forging her father's signature on checks from her part-time job. He was already practicing identity theft as a teenager, Mrs. Martinez, and he bragged about it. He said it was easy money and that adults were too trusting to catch on. She had kept evidence from their relationship, text messages where Marcus detailed his plans to use family connections for business opportunities when he got older, screenshots of conversations where he joked about retirement planning, using other people's credit, written notes in his handwriting that showed he'd been researching financial fraud techniques since he was 17. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because I always wondered what happened to that sweet woman who used to make us cookies and drive us to school events. You were so kind to me even when Marcus and I broke up badly. You didn't deserve this, and I can't let him destroy you the way he tried to destroy my family. David was ecstatic when I shared Jessica's information. This is exactly what we needed. It establishes a pattern of behavior dating back years. It shows premeditation and sophistication, and it completely undermines his defense that this was a recent business decision gone wrong. But Marcus wasn't giving up without a fight. His Miami lawyers filed a motion claiming that I was suffering from age-related cognitive decline, and that my accusations were the result of confusion rather than actual fraud. They produced a psychological evaluation that suggested I might be experiencing early-stage dementia, and was therefore an unreliable witness. The evaluation was based entirely on interviews with Marcus and his business associates, none of whom had ever met me. But it was official-looking enough to cause problems, and several news outlets began questioning whether I was a victim or a confused elderly woman, making false accusations against her son. David scheduled an independent psychological evaluation immediately. Mrs. Martinez, this is their desperation move. They're trying to discredit you personally because they can't discredit the evidence. We're going to get you examined by the best neuropsychologist in the state. And when she confirms that you're mentally sharp, Marcus's credibility will be completely destroyed. The evaluation took 6 hours and covered everything from memory tests to cognitive function assessments. Dr. Patricia Hendricks was thorough, professional, and by the end of our session clearly annoyed by the implications of Marcus's claims. Mrs. Martinez, your cognitive function is well above average for someone your age. Your memory is excellent, your reasoning skills are sharp, and you show no signs whatsoever of dementia or age-related cognitive decline. Whoever prepared that evaluation claiming otherwise was either grossly incompetent or deliberately dishonest. Her report became a crucial piece of our case, but it also revealed something I hadn't expected. During our conversations, Dr. Hendricks had identified signs of what she called complex trauma response, psychological symptoms consistent with long-term manipulation and gaslighting. Mrs. Martinez, I believe your son has been psychologically conditioning you for years to doubt your own perceptions and defer to his judgment. The techniques he used are sophisticated and designed to make victims question their own reality. This wasn't just financial fraud. It was psychological abuse designed to make the financial fraud possible. That diagnosis helped me understand something that had been bothering me since this whole nightmare began. I kept questioning myself, wondering if maybe I had somehow agreed to those loans and forgotten, or if I'd been too trusting, or if I'd missed obvious signs that should have warned me. Dr. Hendricks explained that this self-doubt was a deliberate result of Marcus's manipulation, not a reflection of my actual memory or judgment. Armed with Dr. Hendricks's report, David scheduled a press conference to address the competency questions head-on. Standing behind a podium at the county courthouse, I looked directly into the cameras and spoke with a clarity that surprised even me. My son, Marcus Martinez, wants the world to believe that I'm a confused old woman who doesn't understand what's happening to her. That's not true. I'm 68 years old. I worked as a registered nurse for 42 years. I managed a household budget through 3 recessions, and I raised a son as a single mother. My mind is sharp, my memory is excellent, and I remember every single detail of how my son systematically betrayed my trust and stole my identity. I held up copies of the forged documents. These are not my signatures, despite what they look like. I never signed loan applications for over $1 million. I never agreed to put my home up as collateral for business loans, and I certainly never consented to having my retirement savings stolen to fund my son's fraudulent lifestyle. The press conference was carried live by 3 local news stations and picked up nationally by 2 major networks. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Marcus's lawyers filed a motion to have me declared mentally incompetent within hours, but by then, Dr. Hendrix's evaluation was already part of the public record. More importantly, the FBI announced that their investigation had uncovered evidence of additional victims. Marcus had been running similar schemes in Florida, Arizona, and Nevada, targeting elderly individuals through fake investment opportunities and fraudulent business partnerships. The total amount of his theft was approaching $3 million across multiple victims. Agent Thompson called me that evening with an update that made my heart race. "Mrs. Martinez, we've made a breakthrough in the case. Marcus's defense team has been in contact with our prosecutors about a potential plea agreement." "What kind of plea agreement?" "He's willing to admit to the forgery charges and the identity theft in exchange for a reduced sentence. But there's a condition. He wants all civil lawsuits dropped and immunity from future prosecution by his victims." I felt my anger flare white-hot. He wants to admit he's guilty but face no real consequences? That's essentially what he's asking for, yes. The prosecutors want to know if you'd be willing to consider it. A plea deal would guarantee conviction and some jail time, but it would also mean you might not recover your financial losses. I didn't hesitate. "Agent Thompson, please tell the prosecutors that I reject any plea agreement that doesn't include full restitution for his victims. Marcus destroyed my life and the lives of other innocent people. He doesn't get to negotiate his way out of the consequences just because he finally got caught." David supported my decision completely. "Mrs. Martinez, plea bargains are how sophisticated criminals minimize their punishment. Marcus is betting that you'll accept partial justice because you're tired of fighting. But we're not tired, and we're not backing down." The rejection of the plea offer sent shockwaves through Marcus's legal team. According to courthouse sources that David had cultivated, his Miami lawyers were reconsidering their representation. Defending financial fraud cases is expensive and time-consuming, especially when the evidence is overwhelming and the client's story keeps changing. 2 weeks later, Marcus fired his expensive defense team and hired a public defender. The message was clear. His resources were running out, and his confidence was cracking. David saw this as the beginning of the end. Mrs. Martinez, when defendants start cutting costs on legal representation, it usually means they're preparing to accept whatever deal they can get. Marcus is realizing that his plan to frame you isn't working, and now he's trying to minimize the damage to himself. Out. But I wasn't interested in Marcus's problems anymore. I was focused on rebuilding my own life and helping other victims of his crimes. The FBI had connected me with 2 other women, Margaret Thompson from Phoenix and Dorothy Walsh from Tampa, who had been victimized by Marcus using similar schemes. Margaret was 73 and had lost her entire retirement savings to a fake investment opportunity that Marcus had presented through a fraudulent financial planning company. Dorothy was 81 and had been convinced to take out a reverse mortgage on her home to fund what Marcus claimed was a guaranteed return business venture. Talking to them was both heartbreaking and empowering. We shared strategies for dealing with the legal system, emotional support for the trauma we'd experienced, and practical advice for rebuilding our financial lives. But most importantly, we formed a united front against Marcus's attempts to minimize his crimes through plea bargaining. He targeted us because he thought we'd be easy victims, Margaret said during one of our conference calls. Old women who'd be too ashamed or too confused to fight back effectively. Well, he was wrong about that, wasn't he? Dorothy, despite being the oldest of us, was the fiercest. I didn't survive the Great Depression, raise 6 children, and bury 2 husbands just to be destroyed by some young man who thinks he's smarter than everyone else. Marcus Martinez picked the wrong grandmothers to mess with, Our solidarity became a powerful force in the legal proceedings. When Marcus's new public defender approached prosecutors about a second plea agreement, we were ready with a unified response. We wanted full restitution, maximum jail time, and public admission of the scope of his crimes. Nothing less would be acceptable. The trial was scheduled for February, giving us 4 months to prepare. David used that time to build what he called an airtight case that would make it impossible for any jury to believe Marcus's claims about my involvement. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. Marcus's cellmate in the Miami jail where he was being held contacted the FBI with information about conversations Marcus had been having about his crimes. According to the cellmate, Marcus had been bragging about his genius fraud scheme and how he'd played the victim card perfectly by targeting elderly family members who wouldn't suspect him. He'd described in detail how he'd practiced forging signatures, how he'd researched the psychological techniques needed to manipulate his victims, and how he'd planned to use the stolen money to disappear to a non-extradition country. Most damning of all, Marcus had apparently laughed about how pathetic his victims were for trusting him, and how easy it had been to convince them to provide the personal information he needed for the identity theft. He'd specifically mentioned that I was the perfect mark because I was desperate to believe in him and too old to understand modern financial systems. The cellmate's testimony would be crucial at trial, but hearing about it felt like being stabbed all over again. Even in jail, facing federal charges and potential decades in prison, Marcus was still mocking the people he'd destroyed. There was no remorse, no recognition of the pain he'd caused, no acknowledgement that his victims were human beings whose lives mattered. That night, I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where FBI agents had first told me about Marcus's crimes, and finally allowed myself to grieve. Not just for the money he'd stolen or the security he'd destroyed, but for the son I thought I'd raised, that Marcus had never existed. The real Marcus was a predator who had seen me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited when the time was right. The grieving process was necessary, but it was also finite. By morning, I was ready to face whatever came next with clear eyes and a determined heart. Marcus had taught me that sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we love most. But he'd also taught me that love without boundaries is just enabling, and that protecting someone from the consequences of their actions isn't kindness, it's cruelty. In 3 months, I would sit in a courtroom and watch my son be sentenced for crimes that had nearly destroyed me. I would testify about the betrayal, the manipulation, and the systematic theft that had almost cost me everything. And when it was over, I would walk out of that courthouse with my dignity intact and my future secured. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to let them destroy you. Even when that someone is your own child, even when it breaks your heart all over again. Marcus had gambled that my love for him would be stronger than my sense of justice. He was about to learn just how wrong he'd been about that, too. The trial began on a cold February morning with snow falling outside the federal courthouse. I wore my best Navy suit, the one I'd bought for Marcus's college graduation, and carried a folder containing every document that proved my innocence. David walked beside me through the crowd of reporters, his hand steady on my elbow as cameras flashed and voices shouted questions. Inside the courtroom, I saw Marcus for the first time since his arrest. He looked smaller somehow, thinner, wearing an orange jumpsuit that made his skin appear sallow. When our eyes met across the room, I expected to feel something: anger, sadness, maybe even pity. Instead, I felt nothing. The man sitting at the defendant's table was a stranger who happened to share my DNA. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Chen, opened with a statement that laid out Marcus's crimes in devastating detail. She showed the jury photographs of forged documents, played recordings of phone calls where Marcus posed as me to bank representatives, and presented a timeline that revealed the calculated nature of his betrayal. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she said, "this case is about a son who saw his mother not as a person to love and protect, but as a financial asset to be exploited. Marcus Martinez didn't just steal money. He stole his mother's identity, her security, and her faith in family itself. Marcus's public defender, a tired-looking man named Robert Hayes, tried to paint his client as a desperate entrepreneur who made poor decisions under pressure. But every argument he made fell apart when confronted with the evidence. How do you explain away 18 months of forged signatures? How do you justify stealing your mother's life savings while lying about your love and respect for her? When it came time for victim testimony, I was the first to take the stand. The courtroom was packed with reporters, legal observers, and supporters who had followed my story. I looked directly at the jury as I raised my right hand and swore to tell the truth. David guided me through my testimony with questions that allowed me to tell my story chronologically. I described Marcus's childhood, my sacrifices as a single mother, the pride I'd felt watching him succeed. I explained how he'd gradually gained access to my personal information under the guise of helping me manage my affairs. "Mrs. Martinez," David asked, "when you signed documents that your son presented to you, what did you believe you were signing?" "I believed I was signing character references or emergency contact forms for his business. He told me investors wanted to know that he had family support. I never saw loan applications or credit agreements, because those aren't what he showed me." "Did you ever authorize your son to take out loans using your name or your property as collateral?" "Absolutely not. I would never have agreed to risk my home or my retirement savings on any business venture, especially one I didn't understand." The cross-examination was brutal. Hayes tried to paint me as a confused elderly woman who had agreed to help her son, but later forgot about it. He questioned my memory, my understanding of financial documents, and my motives for pursuing the case. "Mrs. Martinez, isn't it possible that you signed these loan documents but simply don't remember doing so?" I looked him directly in the eye. "Mr. Hayes, I worked as a registered nurse for over 4 decades. I managed medication schedules for dozens of patients, maintained detailed medical records, and made life-or-death decisions based on precise information. My memory is excellent, and I remember exactly what I signed and what I didn't." "Mo." "But you admit that you trusted your son completely?" "Yes, I did. That trust was my mistake. But it wasn't my crime. My son exploited my love for him to commit fraud. That makes me a victim, not an accomplice." Margaret Thompson and Dorothy Walsh testified next, their stories eerily similar to mine. Marcus had used the same techniques on all of us, gaining our trust, gradually accessing our personal information, and then systematically stealing our identities while maintaining the pretense of loving relationships. The most damaging testimony came from Marcus's former cellmate, who repeated the conversations he'd overheard about Marcus's contempt for his victims and his pride in his criminal abilities. Under oath, he testified that Marcus had called me pathetic and had laughed about how easy it had been to manipulate gullible old women. Marcus's face remained impassive throughout the testimony, but I could see his jaw tightening with each damaging revelation. His defense had collapsed completely, and everyone in the courtroom knew it. On the final day of testimony, the prosecution played a recording that the FBI had obtained through a court-authorized wiretap of Marcus's jail phone calls. In it, Marcus was speaking to someone, his voice clear and unmistakable, about his plans to blame everything on his victim's mental incompetence. "These old ladies don't understand modern finance," his voice echoed through the courtroom speakers. "I can make a jury believe they were willing participants who just got confused when things went bad. It's their word against mine, and I'm more credible." The recording continued with Marcus discussing his plans to claim diminished capacity for his victims and his confidence that he could manipulate the system just like he'd manipulated us. When the recording ended, the courtroom was silent except for the soft sound of my own breathing. Looking at Marcus after hearing those words, I felt the last traces of maternal love finally die. This wasn't my son anymore. This was a predator who had worn my son's face while planning my destruction. Closing arguments were swift and decisive. The prosecutor summarized the overwhelming evidence of Marcus's guilt and asked the jury to hold him accountable for crimes that had devastated multiple families. Hayes made a half-hearted plea for leniency, but his heart clearly wasn't in it anymore. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning with guilty verdicts on all counts: federal wire fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, mail fraud, and conspiracy. Marcus showed no emotion as the foreman read each verdict, but I saw his hands trembling slightly as the reality of his situation finally sank in. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later, giving the victims time to prepare impact statements. I spent those weeks writing and rewriting my statement, trying to find words that could adequately express what Marcus had taken from me and what his crimes had cost. When sentencing day arrived, the courtroom was again packed with supporters, media, and legal observers. Judge Patricia Williams, a stern woman with silver hair and penetrating eyes, called the proceedings to order with the gravity that federal sentencing deserves. The prosecutor recommended the maximum sentence allowed under federal guidelines: 15 years in prison, plus full restitution to all victims. Hayes asked for leniency, claiming that Marcus was a first-time offender who deserved a chance at rehabilitation. Then it was time for victim impact statements. Margaret Thompson went first, her voice strong despite her age, as she described how Marcus's fraud had forced her to move in with her daughter and abandon her plans for independent retirement living. Dorothy Walsh followed, explaining how the stress of Marcus's crimes had contributed to her husband's fatal heart attack and how she now lived in constant fear of financial predators who might target her again. When my turn came, I walked to the podium carrying the statement I'd written and rewritten so many times. But when I looked up at Judge Williams, I set the prepared remarks aside and spoke from my heart. "Your Honor, Marcus Martinez stole more than money from me. He stole my sense of safety in the world, my trust in family relationships, and my faith that love could protect me from harm. For 68 years, I believed that if you loved someone unconditionally and supported them completely, they would never deliberately hurt you. Marcus taught me that this belief was naive and dangerous." I turned to look at Marcus directly, but he also taught me something else. He taught me that I'm stronger than I ever knew, that I could survive betrayal by the person I loved most in the world and still find the courage to fight for justice, that I could lose everything I'd worked for and still rebuild my life with dignity. Looking back at the judge, I continued, "I don't want revenge, Your Honor. I want accountability. I want Marcus to face the full consequences of his choices so that he might finally understand the pain he's caused, and I want other potential victims to know that elder abuse will not be tolerated no matter who commits it." Judge Williams listened intently to every word, taking notes and occasionally nodding. When all the victim statements were finished, she asked Marcus if he wanted to make a statement before sentencing. Marcus stood slowly, and for a moment, I thought he might finally show some remorse or acknowledge the pain he'd caused. Instead, he delivered a brief, carefully worded statement that his lawyer had obviously prepared. "Your Honor, I accept responsibility for my actions, and I'm sorry for any harm I may have caused. I ask for your mercy in sentencing so that I can work to make amends to those I've hurt." The words were technically an apology, but they were delivered without emotion or genuine remorse. Even in the face of federal sentencing, Marcus couldn't bring himself to truly acknowledge what he'd done or express authentic regret for his victim's suffering. Judge Williams saw through the performance immediately. "Mr. Martinez, I've reviewed all the evidence in this case, including recordings of your jail phone calls, where you expressed contempt for your victims and pride in your criminal abilities. Your statement today rings hollow in light of your own words describing these crimes as successful manipulations of gullible old women." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the courtroom. "The crimes you committed represent a profound betrayal of trust that strikes at the heart of family relationships and social bonds that hold our communities together. You targeted elderly individuals specifically because you believed they would be vulnerable and unable to defend themselves effectively." Judge Williams continued, "You have shown no genuine remorse for your actions and no real understanding of the devastating impact your crimes have had on your victims. The evidence suggests that you view this prosecution as an inconvenience rather than appropriate consequences for serious criminal behavior." She looked directly at Marcus. "Therefore, I sentence you to 14 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You will make full restitution to all victims in the amount of $2,800,000, plus interest and penalties. You will have no contact with any of your victims during your incarceration or probation period." The sentence was almost the maximum allowed under federal guidelines, and I felt a profound sense of relief wash over me as Judge Williams spoke the words that would finally hold Marcus accountable for his crimes. But she wasn't finished. "Mr. Martinez, I want you to understand something clearly. Your victims were not gullible old women as you described them. They were accomplished, intelligent individuals who trusted you because you were family, not because they were weak or confused. That trust was a gift that you chose to exploit for personal gain." Judge Williams's voice grew stronger. "Mrs. Martinez worked as a registered nurse for over 4 decades, saving lives and serving her community with dedication and skill. Mrs. Thompson raised 6 children while managing the finances for her late husband's small business. Mrs. Walsh survived the Great Depression and built a successful life through hard work and careful planning. These women have contributed more to society than you ever have, and they deserved your protection and respect, not your criminal exploitation." Todd. Marcus remained standing throughout the sentencing, his face expressionless. But I could see something in his posture, a defeat that went beyond just the legal consequences he was facing. For perhaps the first time in his life, someone in authority had seen through his charm and manipulation to the predator underneath. After the judge dismissed court, Marcus was led away in shackles without looking back at the gallery where I sat. I watched him disappear through the security door, knowing it would be at least 14 years before he walked free again, and feeling nothing but relief that justice had finally been served. Outside the courthouse, I stood with David, Margaret, Dorothy, and the small crowd of supporters who had followed our case. The snow had stopped, and afternoon sunlight was breaking through the clouds, casting everything in a golden glow that seemed almost symbolic. A reporter asked me how I felt about the sentence, and I took a moment to consider my answer carefully. I feel like I can finally start rebuilding my life without looking over my shoulder. Marcus chose to see his victims as objects to be exploited rather than people to be loved. Today, the justice system showed him that actions have consequences, even when the perpetrator thinks he's too smart to get caught. David squeezed my shoulder. Mrs. Martinez, we've also received word that the restitution order gives us the legal authority to seize and liquidate all of Marcus's remaining assets. Between his bank accounts, his car, and his personal property, we should be able to recover about 60% of what he stole from you initially. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to help me rebuild. More importantly, it was validation that the system could work when victims refused to be silently destroyed by the people who were supposed to love them. 6 months later, I was sitting in my kitchen, the same kitchen where this nightmare had begun, reading a letter from the FBI. They had used information from Marcus's case to bust a larger identity theft ring that had been targeting elderly individuals across multiple states. 14 other people had been arrested, and dozens of additional victims had been identified and were receiving assistance. My story had become part of something bigger than just my personal tragedy. It had helped expose a systematic pattern of elder abuse that law enforcement agencies were now taking more seriously. The publicity around Marcus's case had led to increased funding for elder fraud investigation units and new legislation protecting senior citizens from financial exploitation. I kept a photo on my refrigerator now, not of Marcus, but of Margaret, Dorothy, and me, standing together outside the courthouse after the sentencing. 3 women who had refused to be defeated by a predator who thought we'd be easy targets. 3 survivors who had turned our individual pain into collective strength. My relationship with the rest of my family had been complicated by Marcus's crimes. Some relatives had initially believed his claims that I was confused or vindictive. Others had known something was wrong, but hadn't spoken up when they could have helped. The truth about Marcus had forced everyone to reevaluate what they thought they knew about our family dynamics. But new relationships had emerged from the ashes of the old ones. I'd become close friends with Margaret and Dorothy, and we talked every week about our healing journeys and our efforts to help other victims of elder abuse. I'd also connected with other families who had experienced similar betrayals, finding comfort in shared experiences and mutual support. The financial recovery had been slower than the legal victory, but it was happening. Between the restitution payments, assistance from victim advocacy organizations, and careful budgeting, I was gradually rebuilding my retirement security. I'd also started working part-time as a patient advocate at the local hospital, using my experience to help other elderly patients navigate complex medical and financial systems. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts again. The psychological manipulation that Marcus had used to make me doubt my own perceptions had been insidious and long-lasting, but therapy and time had helped me recognize that my judgment was sound and my memories were accurate. I was not the confused, gullible victim that Marcus had tried to paint me as in court. A year after the sentencing, I received a letter from Marcus in federal prison. It was the first communication I'd had from him since his arrest, and I debated whether to read it or simply throw it away. Eventually, curiosity won out, and I opened the envelope with trembling hands. The letter was 2 pages long, handwritten in Marcus's familiar script. He wrote about prison life, about the programs he was participating in, about his hopes for the future when he was released. But what struck me most was what the letter didn't contain: any acknowledgement of what he'd done to me, any genuine apology for the pain he'd caused, any recognition that his crimes had been wrong. Instead, Marcus wrote about his plans to rebuild our relationship after his release, and his hope that I would find it in my heart to forgive him. He seemed to believe that time and distance would somehow erase the magnitude of his betrayal, and that our mother-son relationship could simply resume where it had left off before his arrest. I read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and put it in a drawer with other documents from the case. I wouldn't be responding to Marcus's letter, and I wouldn't be rebuilding our relationship when he was released from prison. Some betrayals are too profound to forgive, some trust too shattered to rebuild, but I also wouldn't be destroyed by what Marcus had done to me. I'd survived his crimes, won justice through the legal system, and created a new life built on authentic relationships with people who valued honesty and integrity. I'd learned that family isn't just about blood relationships. It's about people who show up for you when life gets difficult, who support your healing rather than exploiting your vulnerabilities. 2 years after Marcus's sentencing, I was invited to speak at a national conference on elder abuse prevention. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of law enforcement officers, social workers, and advocacy professionals, I felt a sense of purpose that had emerged from my pain. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my name is Rebecca Martinez, and I'm here to tell you that elderly victims of financial abuse are not helpless. We're not confused, we're not weak, and we're not willing to be silent about crimes committed against us. When someone targets us because they think we'll be easy victims, they're making a dangerous mistake. I told them about Marcus's crimes, about the legal battle we'd fought, and about the importance of believing elderly victims when they report financial abuse. I emphasized that sophisticated criminals often target family members specifically because the emotional manipulation makes detection more difficult and prosecution less likely. The person who nearly destroyed my life was my own son, I said. I raised him, loved him, and trusted him completely. That trust made me vulnerable to his crimes, but it didn't make me responsible for them. We must never blame victims for the crimes committed against them, even when those crimes are committed by people they love. The response to my speech was overwhelming. Dozens of professionals approached me afterward with stories of similar cases they'd handled and questions about how to better support elderly victims through the legal process. Several said that hearing from an actual survivor would change how they approach these cases in the future, but the most meaningful response came from an elderly man who waited until everyone else had left before approaching me. He was in his 70s, well-dressed, but with eyes that held a familiar pain. "Mrs. Martinez," he said quietly, "my grandson did something very similar to what your son did to you. I've been too ashamed to report it because I didn't want people to know how foolish I'd been to trust him. But listening to you speak today, I realize that my shame is protecting him and hurting other potential victims." We talked for nearly an hour about his situation, and I connected him with resources that could help him report the crimes and begin his own journey toward justice. Watching him walk away with renewed determination reminded me why sharing my story was so important. Every victim who finds the courage to speak up makes it easier for the next victim to come forward. That evening, alone in my hotel room, I called Margaret and Dorothy to tell them about the conference and the elderly man who had decided to report his grandson's crimes because of my speech. We talked about how our pain had been transformed into purpose, how our individual tragedies had become part of a larger movement to protect vulnerable adults from financial exploitation. "Rebecca," Margaret said, Do you ever think about what would have happened if we just accepted what our families did to us? If we'd been too ashamed or too afraid to fight back? I considered her question carefully. I think Marcus would still be out there, targeting other families, destroying other lives. Our silence would have protected him and endangered everyone else he encountered. Fighting back wasn't just about getting justice for ourselves. It was about preventing future victims. Dorothy added, and we've shown other elderly people that they don't have to accept abuse just because it comes from family members, that their lives and their dignity matter, regardless of their age. 3 years after Marcus's sentencing, I received news that he was being transferred to a lower security prison due to good behavior. The notification was routine. All victims are informed of changes in their offender's custody status, but it reminded me that Marcus would eventually be released and would try to re-enter society. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. The legal protections were in place, and I'd built a life that didn't depend on his approval or involvement. But I was concerned about other potential victims who might encounter him after his release. Marcus had shown no genuine remorse for his crimes, and predators who target elderly individuals rarely change their fundamental nature. I contacted Agent Thompson, who was now working in the FBI's white-collar crime division, to discuss what protections might be available for future potential victims when Marcus was released. He explained that the terms of Marcus's supervised probation would include restrictions on his access to elderly individuals and requirements for financial monitoring. Mrs. Martinez, Agent Thompson said, Marcus will be on the radar of federal probation officers for 5 years after his release. Any indication that he's returning to financial fraud or elder abuse will result in immediate prosecution and likely additional prison time. The system will be watching him closely. That was reassuring, but I knew that the most effective protection would come from continued public awareness of how these crimes operate and how families can protect themselves from financial predators. I continued speaking at conferences, writing articles for senior citizen publications, and working with advocacy organizations to educate potential victims about warning signs of elder financial abuse. The irony wasn't lost on me that Marcus's crimes had ultimately led to my most meaningful work by trying to destroy me. He had inadvertently given me a platform and a purpose that I never would have found otherwise. My pain had been transformed into power, my victimization into advocacy. 5 years after Marcus's sentencing, on the anniversary of the day FBI agents first knocked on my door, I sat in my garden, reflecting on how much my life had changed. The flowers I'd planted were blooming. The vegetables I'd grown were ripening, and the future I was building was taking root in ways I'd never expected. I was 73 years old, financially secure despite Marcus's crimes, surrounded by genuine friendships, and engaged in work that gave my life meaning and purpose. I'd survived the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined to protect other vulnerable adults from similar exploitation. That evening I wrote in the journal I'd been keeping since the trial ended. Today marks 5 years since I learned that my son had stolen my identity and nearly destroyed my life. 5 years since I discovered that the person I loved most in the world saw me as nothing more than a financial resource to be exploited when convenient. It's been a journey of grief, anger, legal battles, and ultimately healing and purpose. I paused, considering what else to write, then continued. Marcus thought that by targeting me, he was choosing an easy victim who would be too ashamed, too confused, or too loving to fight back effectively. He was wrong about every single assumption. I wasn't easy, I wasn't confused, and my love for him wasn't stronger than my commitment to justice. The final entry that night was the most important. I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their destructive behavior, even when that someone is your own child. Sometimes protecting yourself from people who would exploit your love isn't selfish, it's necessary. And sometimes the people who try to destroy us end up giving us exactly what we need to become who we were always meant to be. As I closed the journal and prepared for bed, I felt a sense of completeness that had taken years to achieve. Marcus had taught me that blood relationships don't guarantee loyalty or love, but he'd also taught me that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. He'd shown me that trust should be earned rather than assumed, but he'd also shown me that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of the story. My son had taken $1 million loan in my name, nearly destroying everything I'd worked for in the process. But in fighting back, in refusing to be silently victimized, in demanding justice and accountability, I discovered parts of myself that I never knew existed. I'd found my voice, my strength, and my purpose. Marcus was still in federal prison, serving the consequences of his choices. I was free, surrounded by people who valued honesty and integrity, doing work that mattered, and building a future based on authentic relationships rather than exploitation and manipulation. In the end, we'd both gotten exactly what we deserved, and I could live with that outcome completely.